He thought he was just laying flowers on a stranger's grave. But the note he found there carried a secret so painful, so human, it would not only change his life, but heal millions of hearts across the world. It was an early Sunday morning when Daniel walked through the quiet cemetery, holding a small bouquet of lilies in his hand. The air was cold, and the sky carried a gray stillness that seemed to settle on everything. He wasn't visiting anyone he knew. In fact, he often visited graves of people he had never met. Daniel was in his early 30s, a man with a calm face but tired eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too much sorrow to ever look fully rested. He found peace in cemeteries. There was something about the silence, the stillness, and the stories buried beneath the earth that gave him perspective. Today, though, his steps slowed when he noticed a grave that stood out. The tombstone wasn't the grandest, but what caught his eye were the fresh flowers placed carefully against it. They weren't wilted or tossed, someone had placed them there with love. He knelt down, brushing the morning dew off the marble stone, and read the name, Emily Grace Carter, 1990 to 2010. She had died at just 20 years old. Daniel felt a heaviness in his chest. He whispered the name softly, as though it would reach wherever she might be. A part of him was curious, who was this young woman? Why did her grave look so tenderly cared for? As he placed his lilies beside the fresh flowers, he noticed something unusual. Tucked under the vase was a folded piece of paper, worn by rain but still legible. His fingers hesitated, but curiosity overtook him, and he gently pulled it free. When he opened it, he found himself staring at words that would change his life forever. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you." The message was simple but carried a weight that crushed him. His heart tightened, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt that the grave he had chosen to honor that morning wasn't random. It had chosen him. Daniel couldn't shake off the words he had read. That night, as he sat in his small apartment with the note placed on his coffee table, he wondered who Emily Grace Carter had been. Why would someone leave such a heartbreaking message? The next day, he returned to the cemetery. He hoped to see whoever had placed the flowers, but no one came. Instead, he sat by Emily's grave, talking softly as if she were listening. He told her about his own life, about the loneliness that shadowed him since his younger brother died in a car accident years ago. He confessed that he often carried guilt, wondering if he could have done something to prevent it. For some reason, speaking to Emily's stone felt different. It felt like she understood. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel kept coming back. Then one afternoon, as he sat cross-legged by the grave, he heard footsteps behind him. An older woman with silver hair and kind but tired eyes approached, carrying another bouquet of roses. She stopped short when she saw him there. "You knew her?" she asked softly. Daniel shook his head. "No, ma'am. I just wanted to bring her flowers." She looked at him for a long moment before tears welled up in her eyes. "Emily was my daughter," she whispered. They sat together in silence, the weight of loss filling the air between them. Slowly, she began to talk. Emily had been bright, full of dreams. She wanted to be a nurse, to help people, but she had died tragically in a house fire that consumed their home one night. Her mother, Mrs. Carter, managed to escape, but Emily never made it out. "I tried to save her," Mrs. Carter said through tears. "But the fire was too strong. And I've lived every day since then with that guilt." Suddenly, Daniel realized the note wasn't left by some stranger. It was from Emily's own mother. That single sentence carried all the pain of a woman who had lost everything. He felt his heart breaking in ways he didn't know it could. He placed his hand gently over hers and whispered, "It wasn't your fault. You loved her. That's what matters." And from that day forward, Daniel's visits to Emily's grave were no longer solitary. He had found someone whose grief mirrored his own. Over the following months, Daniel and Mrs. Carter grew closer. Their bond wasn't built on casual friendship but on shared grief and healing. They would meet at Emily's grave, sit in the grass, and talk about life, love, and the things they had lost. Sometimes, Mrs. Carter brought photos of Emily, showing her in her bright yellow dress at her high school graduation, laughing with friends, or holding a stethoscope around her neck during her nursing training. Daniel listened, captivated, as though Emily were becoming alive through her mother's stories. For the first time in years, Mrs. Carter didn't feel alone in her sorrow. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt like his own grief was less of a burden and more of a bridge that connected him to another human being. Slowly, Daniel began to share about his brother, Mark. He told her how Mark had been his best friend, how he'd always looked up to him, and how he carried guilt for not being in the car that night. "If I had been there, maybe I could have done something," Daniel admitted, his voice breaking. Mrs. Carter placed her hand on his and said firmly, "You can't carry the weight of the impossible. Love is not about saving, it's about being there, about caring. You loved him. And that's enough." Those words dug deep into Daniel's heart, freeing a part of him he had locked away. They began to find healing together in the most unexpected place. Beside the grave of a girl who had been gone for 15 years. Every flower they placed was no longer a symbol of loss, but of love, love that survived, love that healed, love that still mattered. Word spread in the small town about the man and the grieving mother who visited the cemetery every week. Strangers began leaving flowers too, and soon Emily's grave became a place of remembrance not just for her but for everyone who had lost someone. What began with one bouquet from Daniel turned into a field of blossoms, a quiet testimony to the power of connection and kindness. One summer evening, on the anniversary of Emily's passing, Daniel and Mrs. Carter stood together, surrounded by dozens of flowers left by strangers who had been touched by Emily's story. Mrs. Carter looked around with tears streaming down her cheeks and said, "She's gone, but look at what she's done. Even in death, she's still bringing people together." Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. For him, this grave had once been just a stone in a field of silence, but now it had become a symbol of life, of hope, of forgiveness. He bent down, placed a single lily on the grave, and whispered, "Thank you, Emily. You saved me." At that moment, Mrs. Carter leaned against him and whispered back, "And you saved me." They both knew that grief never truly left, it became part of you. But it could transform. It could be softened by love, by understanding, and by the willingness to keep remembering. From then on, Daniel and Mrs. Carter didn't just visit Emily's grave, they started a small foundation in her name, supporting young nursing students with scholarships. It was their way of keeping Emily's dream alive. News of their story spread, and soon, people from across the country wrote letters, sharing their own grief and how Emily's story helped them heal. The simple act of placing flowers on a grave had rippled outward, touching millions of hearts across the world. And so, every year, people gathered at Emily's resting place, each bringing flowers, each whispering thanks for the girl who left too soon, but whose story changed so many lives. In the quiet cemetery, amid the rows of stones, Emily's grave stood as a reminder: love never dies, it only finds new ways to bloom.